Welcome to Good Grief, the podcast where resilience meets reality. I'm your host, Dr. Christine Malone. In this podcast, we delve deep into the stories of individuals who've triumphed over tragedy, adversity, and trauma. In every episode, we bring you raw and honest narratives from guests who faced life's most challenging moments head on. Through candid conversations, they share their journeys of resilience, shedding light on the strategies, mindset shifts, and support systems that empowered them to rise above their darkest hours. Join us as we explore the profound depths of human resilience and discover how, even in the face of life's toughest trials, there can be light, growth, and yes, good grief. Okay, listeners, thank you so much for joining me for my episode today. My guest is a repeat guest. Susan is here, and she's going to talk to us about the loss of her parents, both having lost both of them in the last 2 years, it looks like, and both of them at an elderly age. So tell us a bit about what all that's like. What is it like to have parents live long lives? I did not have that with my parents, and then the grieving process.
Well, yeah, Christine, I just learned through the process of losing my parents at this stage of life that, not that I didn't realize it before, but society doesn't mourn the very elderly in the same way, and appropriately so, as younger people.
Right.
But what I learned is that the love that people around those individuals had, is the grief is still proportional to the wonderful relationship you may have had with your parents or not had. Frankly, it can be very conflicting depending on your situation. And so, you know, one thing that came to mind, many things have come to mind over the last almost 2 years, not even about a year and a half since my mother died, is how do I word it? Let's see. That I went too long having them to talk to and get their perspective and get their advice. And so here I am at this advanced age of 60 plus. Whoa, I can't even get my parents' perspective anymore.
Right.
And not that it was the sole perspective that made my decisions, but we had a good relationship. And so there was a lot of bouncing off of them, and also, of course, with my husband and, people that are important to you in your life. And so you hear the expression all the time. I go to pick up the phone and to tell my parent something, and they're gone. So I'm just here to share or have people food for thought that if you're grieving your elderly parents, it's really okay. Yes, I'm grateful, beyond grateful, that I've had them for so long. So it's very much in perspective. I'm grateful that the relationships were good. I'm grateful that I turned out semi-normal. I mean, it's all good, right? But you still need to allow yourself to grieve. And that grief is private.
Yep.
The world doesn't have to sanction your grieving over a 90-year-old.
Yep.
So my sister and I were very much daddy's girls, very much. And so him not being there is the weirdest thing. But it's time to grow up, I suppose, So, and be happy that there was the memory of a quality relationship like that.
I know with all the episodes that I've done for this podcast, it always surprises me when I do hear people say things like, "Oh, but they live to be, 90, or they live to be whatever." So therefore, it's like, well, then I shouldn't miss them or grieve them because they lived at that
Yeah.
age. And I'm thinking, well, okay, I get what you're saying. You were fortunate to have them for that length of time. I don't have, because my father died at the age of 59.
So
I
young.
have things where
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I should ask my dad this. He's always got the best advice. I didn't have that. So he
Mm,
lived long enough to be, the sage of advice and so on. So
mm,
I get that. But to me, that's a loss on my part. I wish I had. But I also am thinking,
mhm.
when your parents live to be, into their 80s or 90s, whatever, you've got so many of those rich memories and things that it's probably even more so of a loss with the grief, because you've all of that you have and have experienced that some of us never had. Right? Does that make sense?
Right, right. Yes, and like I said, perspective is important. My sister and I laugh how, here we were in our early 60s when our parents passed, and so we went from walking in their house and still feeling like you're 25 to boom, you're old. You're the oldest generation, boom, that. And so you would, okay, that's just reality. I mean, I'm really good at reality, you know? But as I say to my husband every so often, I said, okay, there's a wave of grief coming in today. You might not want to talk to me for a couple hours. And you know, I need to sort through whatever's going on, you know. Allow it. You need to allow it. And no one in society or even your family should say, "Oh, you should be
Mhm.
done because they were old and had a wonderful life." I think you need to allow for the loss while you keep the perspective. And I'll give a very, very distinct example. I'm going to a baby shower tomorrow, and it is for the oldest daughter of my very best friend in the world who died at 55.
Mm.
So she asked would I stay in touch with her girls, and I've been invited to their weddings, and now there's a baby coming. And she died at 55 and her husband died at 49. These girls have been without their parents, starting missing their dad when they were 16 and 19, losing their mom at 23 and 27, I think it was. What do I have to complain about, right? So I'm just noting that it's not about complaint or thinking, "Oh, I have it so bad." It's allowing. I've learned that it's okay to allow yourself to grieve, no matter how old your parents were,
Yeah.
and keep it in perspective because it's your grief.
Yeah.
It's okay to miss them. And then it's even better when you get to the point of really laughing and enjoying the memories
Yes.
about them. And we are more and more to that point, like every Thanksgiving, every Thanksgiving, how big is the turkey? How many pounds? Every Thanksgiving, every year. And then he'd want to help with the apple pie. He would complain that I asked him to slice the apples very thinly. Why? Why do I have to? Yeah. But it was the same conversation for 20 years once he was coming to my, but it's funny. Like I always say to my husband, tell me the pounds that you bought. So I'm ready for the questions,
Yes. Yes.
And so, yeah, so you're always mixing the grief with finding ways to enjoy the memories.
Yep.
Um,
One thing that
yeah,
comes to mind that I wanna make sure I'm pointing out, which I know it's the underlying theme of what we're talking about today, is it's really it's not a competition, that my grief is worse than your grief or whatever, or you have no
that's a
right
very
to grieve.
good point.
Yeah, you have no
Right.
right to grieve because your parents were 80 and 90, and, that is so stupid. It's like, well, what I feel is what I feel, and what I grieve and what I miss
Mhm.
and, so that to me, for instance, with my son that passed away, I've had people say, "Well, but, yeah, you did this, or you have other kids," whatever. I'm thinking it doesn't make that loss any different, okay? It doesn't make that loss less because of other things. So, you don't get to sit there and say, "Well, yeah, but you got to keep your parents until you had them until they were this." It's like, yes, I did, but I still have the right to grieve, and it's healthy to do so. So it's not a bad thing. It's not like I have to excuse
Yeah.
myself or like I said, I have had other guests that'll say things, "Well, at least he was X years old," and I think, "Okay, well, what difference
You
does it?"
take comfort in that. You
Yeah,
take some comfort in that,
yes,
right?
but it doesn't mean
Um,
miss the person, and I don't miss I mean,
right.
conversation about the
Right.
turkey reminded me of my dad, who my favorite holiday is Thanksgiving, and he would come up for Thanksgiving and rant and rave about how wonderful my food was. So every year Thanksgiving, even though he's been gone forever, I think about my
Yeah.
dad on Thanksgiving. So it's kind of one of those great memories, and I love your turkey pound story. So it's kinda like
Yeah, yeah. I and my brother came for Thanksgiving this year, and it was with his wife, and we always call him the family PIA at times, right? So I said to my husband, I said, "Well," I said, "this was, the first Thanksgiving without my father." And so my brother will come and ask questions that
turkey size.
you're just you don't know whether to be annoyed or not or whatever. I said it'll be a good replacement for now. And one of the beautiful things is then he invited his daughter, her husband, and their son to come and didn't tell me until it was a done deal. And that's a good thing because it made me think back to my parents that the door was open. He knew it. My brother knew our door is open. Doesn't matter the number. The only thing I did have to say to him, I'm out of bedrooms. You're gonna have to figure out how to stay overnight. I'm out of bedrooms, but I don't care if you bring more.
Yep, yep,
No one goes home hungry. It's all
make it
good.
work.
You know,
Did he ask about the turkey size?
he did.
I love it. I love it.
He thought he's very conscious of money
Yeah.
and savings. He wanted to know why on earth would you make two? Why? And I said, because I want everybody to have the opportunity for
Come
leftovers
home. Yep.
to bring with them. And if I only do one, that might not be the case.
I do the exact same thing, and I make way more food than I could feed a town full, but I sent it all home with people, and I my favorite holiday, but
Yeah.
I absolutely love that story. Well, Susan, thank
Yeah.
you so much for being my guest today. It's
Thank
always
you.
a pleasure to chat with you, and thanks for
Likewise.
your story. I am sorry for the loss of your parents, but I am also quite that you had them for so long. Your kids had them as
Yeah.
grandparents. I just
Oh my gosh.
warms.
Yes, they were grandparents times 11. How and met each one of them. How fortunate, right? So again, it's perspective combined with allowing yourself to grieve.
Yep.
It puts you off center. Loss, births and deaths put you off center until you find your new center.
Your new
Yeah.
center. Yes. Well, I wish you all the best, and again, thank you so much.
Likewise.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Good Grief. We hope that stories shared today have inspired and empowered you on your own journey of resilience. If you want to dive deeper into the themes of trauma, tragedy, and survival, be sure to check out my memoir, The Day I Became the Spider Killer, a memoir of trauma, tragedy, and survival. In this book, I shared my own raw and honest experiences, offering insights and strategies for overcoming life's toughest challenges. You can purchase the book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or listen to it on Audible. Your support helps us continue to bring these powerful stories to light and spread a message of hope and resilience. Stay tuned for more incredible stories on our next episode. Until then, remember, even in the face of life's toughest trials, there can be light, growth, and good grief.